Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Recording in progress.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, everybody. So thank you very much again for this opportunity to discuss the glories of Sri Mahavendra Puri. And we'll discuss along the glories of Srila Prabhupada and His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. This is a dream topic for me. I was really struck that when Maharaj recently visited Kurukshetra, in his arrival address, he had mentioned that this is one of his favorite pastimes, because it is one of my favorite pastimes, and I did not know it was one of his, and it is one of my favorite pastimes because I remember when I first heard this pastime and read it, I was struck by the parallels between Mahavendra Puri and Srila Prabhupada and His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. And so I thought what was requested of me today was to discuss this pastime and maybe share some of those parallels that we see in this pastime and how we can see those great qualities manifesting in our acharya. So that will be the topic today. So we'll discuss the pastime for a little bit, just to provide some context, and then after narrating the pastime for some time, then we'll kind of come back and pull out some of the key learnings and essences of that of this pastime. And it's important to note that when we study these pastimes that are in Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and elsewhere, they provide great sense of enjoyment and hearing, also maybe some entertainment, some fascination. But these pastimes are extremely instructive for us. And so when we get to these pastimes, it's nice to be able to, really extract the teachings that are embedded within there. So we'll definitely spend some time trying to pull out some of the key lessons from these pastimes. So we'll read today from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter number 4, text number 106, and the title is Sri Mahavendra Puri's Devotional Service. I know I did not announce this verse in advance, so I'll just read it and go into the translation and then into the purport. Gopala kahe puri amara tapa nahiyaya malaya jachandana lepata bise judaya. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. In his dream, Mahavendra Puri saw Gopal, who said, "My bodily temperature still is not decreased. Please bring sandalwood from Malaya province and smear the pulp all over my body to cool me." Purport. The deity of Gopal has been buried within the jungle for many years, and although he was installed and was offered thousands of pots of water, he still was very hot. He therefore asked Mahavendra Puri to bring sandalwood from the Malaya province. Sandalwood produced in Malaya is very popular. That province is situated on the western Ghat and the hill of Nilagiri, is sometimes known as Malaya Hill. The word Malayaja is used to indicate that sandalwood produced in the Malaya province. Sometimes the word Malaya refers to the modern country of Malaysia. Formerly, this country also produced sandalwood, but now they have found it profitable to produce rubber trees. Although the Vedic culture was once prevalent in Malaysia, now all the inhabitants are Muslims. The Vedic culture is now lost in Malaysia, Java, and Indonesia. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dharati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamstra Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwabhanusate Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpadrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunivari Paschat Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So I'd like to beg the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas here so that we can have a nice discussion today on the glories of Mahavendra Puri. So this pastime is described in the context of the verse we read. I'll give a little bit of context to how this pastime gets presented in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then a little bit of context to Mahavendra Puri before getting into the pastime. So after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had taken sannyas, he went to the house of Advaita Acharya, and there Sachimata begged him to not go to Vrindavan, which was his intended place to go, and instead to take residence in Jagannath Puri. And there in Puri, Sachimata would get word of what was happening with Gauranga Mahaprabhu, and that would ease some of the pains of separation. So Gauranga Mahaprabhu agreed, and so after leaving Advaita Acharya's house, he, along with Lord Nityananda and a few associates, began their journey towards Jagannath Puri. And they stopped in various villages, various holy places, and performed ecstatic kirtan, which is the activity of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And they soon came upon the very beautiful town of Remuna. And here there was a glorious deity of Gopinath that was being worshipped there. And so Gauranga Mahaprabhu had assembled his group there. They performed ecstatic kirtan and were enjoying this very beautiful form of Gopinath, who we'll hear a little bit more about in a few minutes. And at that time, Mahaprabhu personally narrated the glories of Mahavendra Puri. And Krishnas Kaviraj Goswami has documented this in his Chaitanya Charitamrita and has relayed this beautiful conversation that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was giving on Mahavendra Puri, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard about the glories from his spiritual master Ishvara Puri. So that's the context of how this conversation arises. It's very beautifully described, again, in the Madhya Lila 4th chapter. So I hope everybody will be inspired to read this chapter after this conversation that we have today. It's a very sweet pastime. We'll certainly not be able to cover all the details that are presented therein, but we'll cover some of the highlights. So who is Mahavendra Puri? Again, before we get into the pastime, it's very important to understand Mahavendra Puri is a great acharya in our Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. Mahavendra Puri, for lineage context, he is the great guru, so the guru of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's guru, so he appeared 2 generations prior to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so just prior to his time. And he took initiation in the Madhavacharya Sampradaya. And Mahavendra Puri performed one very, very important function in our Sampradaya, in addition to what we'll hear today, which is that he was the first to teach and to install into our Sampradaya the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna, this Madhurya Rasa. So prior to Mahavendra Puri, in our Sampradaya, Radha Krishna was not celebrated nor understood in a deep way. And so it was Mahavendra Puri who introduced this rasa into our Sampradaya. And we know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came actually in the mood of Srimati Radharani, specifically experiencing the mood of separation from her beloved Krishna, and taught us the practice of bhakti in this rasa. So it was Mahavendra Puri who actually inaugurated this rasa into our sampradaya. So we have a great deal of gratitude to Mahavendra Puri for having an opportunity to understand and study these pastimes of Krishna in this sort of Madhurya rasa. So that is the significance of Mahavendra Puri. And his devotional life is extraordinarily glorified, and we'll see in this pastime now that we'll discuss here about Mahavendra Puri. So Mahavendra Puri came to Vrindavan, and coming to Vrindavan, he had reached Govardhan. And there at Govardhan, he became ecstatic, remembering and recalling all the wonderful pastimes of Krishna in Govardhan. And he went on parikrama of Govardhan. As we know, Krishna himself inaugurated the process of performing Govardhan parikrama in his way of breaking the pride of Lord Indra. He inaugurated his Govardhan puja, but he was the one who actually installed this process. It's one of the few yagyas and process that he himself inaugurated. And so Mahavendra Puri, following in that footsteps, performed parikrama. And he came to rest at Govind Kund. And Govind Kund, you may recall from that pastime of lifting of Govardhan, was the place where Lord Indra begged for forgiveness for his mistakes from Krishna. And there he performed Abhishek of the Supreme Lord, having brought Airavata and the Surabhi cow. He performed a grand Abhishek, and the waters from that Abhishek collected into this Govind Kund, which is still present today. Anytime you go to take parikrama of Govardhan, you must visit Govind Kund and sprinkle some water on your head. It is a very auspicious place. And it was there that he was resting under a tree. Today his bhajan kutir is also there. And this tree that he rested upon, which is not exactly where the bhajan kutir is, but just nearby, is also there. So Mahavendra Puri was resting under this tree, a little fatigued, and he was chanting his japa, as Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes. And then he dozed off. Before he dozed off, he was resting under this tree, and one boy came. Beautiful, beautiful boy, with a form that Mahavendra Puri had never seen before, and a fragrance that was so enchanting. And the boy said that, why you are not going out to beg for food, beg for alms. You are hungry and fasting, and so I have brought you this milk. Please honor this milk. And Mahavendra Puri was struck. He said, how this boy knew I was fasting? I have not told anybody. And so he asked, and he said, well, nobody in my village goes hungry. I am the proprietor and the overseer of this village, and nobody goes hungry. And the ladies who came to collect some water told me you're fasting, so I have brought you this milk. Please enjoy it. I'll come and collect a pot a little bit later. And so Mahavendra Puri, before he could know it, this boy disappeared. And he was struck. Who is this boy? And so he drank the milk. And it was the most nectarian milk he had ever tasted in his whole of life. He had never experienced such a experience of satisfaction and bliss honoring milk. And it was so wonderful. And after honoring that milk, he dozed off to take a little bit of rest. And in his dream, he saw that same boy who had come to give him milk. And this same boy said, my dear Mahavendra Puri, you are my great devotee. I have been waiting for you to come. Why? Because I am actually been lost, buried in a bush deep in the jungle. And I would like you to take me out and bring me back to health. I am burning hot and also very cold. I have been not eaten for a long, long time. And so please unearth me from this bush in the jungle and start to worship me. And Mahavendra Puri was shocked. And he awoken and he realized that he had seen the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. And he went into ecstasy and began dancing and jumping and rolling on the ground. But immediately he caught himself and he regained his senses, and he said, "No, let me go and execute the order of the Lord." And so this deity, actually, it was hidden in the bush. It was actually established by Vajranath himself, the great-grandson of Krishna, who had established various deities within Vrindavan. This was one of those deities. But when the Mughals came and were destroying many temples, this deity was taken and hidden in this bush, and the pujaris left. And since then, it had been lost. Not lost, we can say hidden. And so Mahavendra Puri now was being requested by the Lord himself to re-establish this worship. And so when Mahavendra Puri took this instruction to heart, he gathered some local villagers, recognizing that it was not going to be easy to get to this place. And so they cut through dense jungles. And you can imagine the residents were wondering, who is this person who we don't know, Mahavendra Puri, who is saying the Lord came to him in a dream and saying that some deity is in the bush. So they were kind of a little bit half-hearted, wondering, is this real? What is happening? But they finally, after great effort, reached this bush, and he instructed that, move it aside, cut through it, and sure enough, they found this deity of Gopal. And Gopalji was there. He was covered in dirt and grass and mud, and they slowly kind of, moved it, cleansed it to a little bit degree, and they realized that this deity was so large that it would be great struggle to bring him. But they brought the strongest of men that had come with them, and they, with great effort, picked up this deity of Gopalji, and they brought him back to Govardhan. And on the top of Govardhan, they established a little asana. They took a giant stone and they placed this Gopalji deity there, and they also placed a stone on the back. And so now, people are really struck that this Mahavendra Puri, he was personally told by the Lord that this deity is there, and now they are watching. He is going to enact the worship. So they became very, engladdened to be in association with Mahavendra Puri. So Mahavendra Puri then established, a very detailed process to perform abhishek of this great deity. So they performed abhishek with water. They brought many pots, 900 pots of water from Govind Kund. They scented it with various scents. They also bathed the deity with various oils to bring shine and luster to the deity. They bathed the deity with Panchagavya, 5 of the products from cows, which are very pleasing to Gopal. Gopal means protector of the cows, so they offered Panchagavya, they offered Panchamrit, this 5 nectars that exist, and like this, very elaborately, they performed bathing, and they performed bathing again, and then a Mahasnan, so 2 or 3 times performed a very beautiful abhishek of the Supreme Lord. And as word started to spread, all the villagers began to bring all of their boga. They emptied their storehouses of boga in excitement to be able to serve the Lord. And so after performing this abhishek and all this boga arrived, the next day they began to cook for the Lord. And Mahavendra Puri directed, some brahmanas to cook all the dry items and chapatis and other things, other brahmanas to cook the vegetables. And like this, a giant feast was made. This feast so large, it rivals the feast that was made when Krishna himself enacted Nanda Baba and all the elderly Gopas to take this Indra Puja and turn it into Govardhan Puja. So like this, huge quantities and beautiful description is given in this Chaitanya Charitamrita about the mountains of rice and dal and pakoras and sabjis. And I realize it's Dwadashi, and I know maybe people are fasting, and so I won't speak too much about the sweets and the cakes and the creams, but such a beautiful feast. Actually, it's explained, the whole top of Govardhan was covered with offerings to Gopalji. And in Krishna's Kaviraj comments, how amazing and miraculous it was that in a very short amount of time, they were able to create such a gigantic offering to Gopalji. This is the reciprocation of the Lord. And when the pure devotee endeavors to render service, miracles happen beyond one's dream. And so this big festival was celebrated with an anakut, and everybody was enjoying. And after Gopalji had eaten all the offerings, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains that Mahavendra Puri was able to see Gopalji actually eating all of the offerings. Such an elevated personality, just like our Srila Prabhupada, once was asked, Prabhupada, did the deities actually eat the offerings? And Prabhupada said, yes, I can see them, but you cannot. But in time you will as well. So as we purify our senses through devotional service, actually we can see these spiritual activities. So Mahavendra Puri was able to observe Gopalji eating all the Ankut offerings. And after he had eaten thoroughly, then of course there was wonderful prasadam distribution, a great feast, and Mahavendra Puri directed that everybody should be fed sumptuously, from the very young to the very old, and to feed everyone liberally. And so all the residents enjoyed a grand feast. It's noted Mahavendra Puri was very, very austere, and so he did not honor. He honored just a little bit of milk preparation as his daily meal. He was not partaking in the grand feast, but certainly was relishing all the devotees enjoying. And so this anakut was completed, and the next day, another local village came and requested Mahavendra Puri, may we, perform the anakut today and bring all of our supplies. And like this, Mahavendra Puri agreed. And so every day, a giant anakut festival was happening, and each village would come and bring, basically emptying their storehouse of all of their boga and making this giant offering. And they understood, that Krishna consciousness is about this. When we serve and surrender everything to Krishna, we sometimes wonder in our immature state, what will happen to me? If I give all my boga to Krishna, where will my chapatis come tomorrow? But one who knows, who understands that when Krishna is served, everyone becomes fully satisfied. Just like watering the root of the tree, all the branches become nourished. When we serve the Supreme Lord, everybody becomes nourished. And so the villagers had no reservation in providing all of their stocks. And like this, all around Govardhan and all around Vrindavan, village after village, every day, this giant Anakut festival was taking place. And Mahavendra Puri was getting many followers. He was initiating disciples. Specifically 2 Brahmanas came from Bengal, and he began to train them in the worship of this Gopal deity. Soon, some of the wealthier individuals from Mathura came and started bringing, different cooking utensils and different paraphernalia, gold and silver. And finally, one rich person desired to build a very nice, beautiful temple. So all of this was manifesting on its own, through the blessings of the Supreme Lord, reciprocating with the pure devotion of Mahavendra Puri. And soon a beautiful temple was established, and this festival was going on every day. And it was going on for 2 years like this. And then after 2 years' time has elapsed, Mahavendra Puri was taking rest. And in his dream, now this is the second time he is having a transcendental dream. And in his taking rest, Gopalji came to him and said, Mahavendra Puri, my body is still burning with heat. It is so hot. It is not cooled. Though you have performed so much abhishekam, it is not yet cooled. I need a special chandan. So if you can please go to Jagannath Puri and retrieve this chandan. If you apply it to my body, only then I will become cool. And so Mahavendra Puri, hearing this instruction, he awoke again and was ecstasy that Krishna had come and spoken to him directly again. And so he understood that his job, his responsibility was now to bring chandan to the Lord. So he entrusted the worship of Gopalji in this Anakut festival to a couple of his followers, his disciples that he had properly trained. And immediately he left all of this and began walking to Jagannath Puri. There's no flight, there's no train, there's no bus. This is walking some 2,000 kilometers through dense jungle, different dangers along the way, so much austerity. But Mahavendra Puri was enthusiastic to render service to his beloved Gopalji. So he began making his way towards Jagannath Puri to retrieve this very special chandan and camphor. And so along the way, he stopped at the house of Advaitacharya in Shantipur, and it was there that Advaitacharya became stunned with the pure devotional mood of Mahavendra Puri. And he begged Mahavendra Puri to give him initiation. And so Mahavendra Puri gave initiation to Advaita Acharya. Mahavendra Puri is the initiating guru for Advaita Acharya, Lord Nityananda, and of course Ishvara Puri. And this is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whenever he would engage with Advaita Acharya, he would always want to show him great respect and veneration, because he is the god brother of his guru, like his god uncle, as we can say. And so Mahavendra Puri initiated Advaita Acharya and then left, and he made his way to this place of Ramuna, where we read this verse. We'll come to that specific pastime in a minute. But there was a beautiful deity by the name of Gopinath. And in Ramuna, this Gopinath was being worshipped very beautifully. And so Mahavendra Puri, observing, became very intrigued. He thought that let me understand and learn how they are serving their Gopinath, because my Gopalji is no different. And if I can learn something from them, it would be very nice. So he began to inquire from the priests, from the pandas, about this, worship of Gopinath. And he learned that actually in the evening, they prepare a very special offering, something that is not found anywhere in the world. And it is a special sheer, this condensed milk. And it is so flavorful. It is called Amrita Keli. Such wonderful nectar. And they offer 12 pots of it at night for the Lord to enjoy. And so, like this Mahavendra Puri was just thinking, as the pujari was bringing the offering to the deity, he thought, if by chance, without asking, somebody gives me some of this sheer, I can taste it, and from that I can understand how it's cooked, and I can prepare it for my Gopalji. But immediately he thought to himself, oh no, I've had a desire to eat this before the Lord himself has eaten. I am such an offender. Of course, his desire to eat it was not to enjoy it, but to learn how to serve the Lord better. But still, he was so strict and disciplined. He considered himself so fallen to have a desire to honor something before the Lord had eaten it. Just like we know Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, at a very young age, had a desire to have some mango. He was like 3 years old. And when he desired to have that mango, his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, explained, oh my dear child, don't worry. Let us first offer to the Lord and then you can have. But Bhaktisiddhanta was so strict. He thought, oh my God, I am such an offender, that from that day for the rest of his life, he never ate mango. Anytime his disciples would bring him mango, he would say, no, I'm an offender. Even they would bring a chutney made of mango, he would not honor. So strict and disciplined. So we can follow and understand the importance of not having this desire before the Lord is eaten. So anyways, Mahavendra Puri, feeling that he had committed a great offense, he immediately left the temple. And he went to some remote place in the village and just began to sit there and chant japa. And like this, he was chanting japa and passing the night, lamenting that he was so fallen. And the pujari who was performing the offering had left the 12 pots of kheer, did the final arti, put the deities to rest, closed the temple, locked the gate, and then himself went to take rest. But after he was taking rest, the panda, the pujari, was awoken by the Lord. And he said, hey, get up, go back to the altar. I have kept 1 pot of the sheer. You only removed 11 pots. But there's one I have hidden underneath my dress. I want you to take that and go find Mahavendra Puri and give it to him from me. And the pujari was stunned. What? How is this possible? So he quickly got up, took bath, changed his clothes, and opened the temple, opened the altar, and sure enough, he moved the cloth, and there was one pot of sheer. He thought, wow, who is this Mahavendra Puri that Gopinath himself has kept a pot of sheer for him? And so he went out into the streets, into the village, trying to find out, anyone by the name of Mahavendra Puri, anybody by the name of Mahavendra Puri, please present yourself. Gopinath is giving you something. He's giving you this sheer. And like this, he is looking for Mahavendra Puri. And finally, he sees Mahavendra Puri just sitting in a remote area chanting his japa. And he makes the announcement, Mahavendra Puri says, yes, it's me. And this Banda offers prostrated obeisances immediately to Mahavendra Puri, recognizing how great a devotee he must be, that the Lord himself took this pot of sheer for him. And so there's a beautiful commentary and a wonderful purport from Srila Prabhupada on this that hopefully you all can read at some point about the etiquette of recognizing one's devotion, and how even a pujari offers obeisances when he meets an elevated devotee. So Mahavendra Puri was stunned that he was desiring to have this sheer, and that Gopinath himself had personally delivered it to him. And so he relished the sheer with great enthusiasm and enjoyed it very, very much. And then he actually took the pot, the clay pot, he broke into many, many pieces and tied it into his chadar. And every day from that point, he would honor a piece of this pot as prasad from Gopinath. So Mahavendra Puri then left Ramuna, knowing that he had to continue on to Jagannath Puri. And so he continued on his way to Jagannath Puri to retrieve this sandalwood. By the time he had reached Jagannath Puri, he had become very, very famous. People had understood that he had established the worship of this Gopal deity in Vrindavan, and his fame had carried all the way to Jagannath Puri, and so people were worshiping him, and he was very hesitant and resistant to this type of fame and adoration. But he continued on because he had to perform the service of finding this chandan. So finding this amount of chandan is no easy task. But finally, through some different conversations, he was able to meet with some government officials, and they were able to establish and the requisite amount of chandan that he was to bring, along with some camphor. And he had 2 servants with him helping to bring this. Also had some paperwork he had to clear. There were tolls and different taxes at this time. So, immigration issues that we face going to different countries, it existed even in those days. So with all the requisite paperwork, after all this effort, crossing 2,000 kilometers, he finally had this chandan. And now he had a very arduous task. How to take this chandan, through the jungles. First of all, carrying 82 pounds of chandan. What kind of load and how difficult that would be, taking it through all the different dense, thick jungles, but let alone all the dacoits and thieves who would understand and recognize the great value of this chandan. So this was a very dangerous and difficult mission. But it was a mission of the Lord. And so Mahavendra Puri, very determined, began to make his way from Jagannath Puri. And he was returning back on the same path that he had come. And he was making his way, and he once again reached Ramuna, this Gopinath temple. There by this time he was now known as Shir Chor Gopinath, the Gopinath who stole a pot of sheer for the beloved Mahavendra Puri. And so there Mahavendra Puri took rest. And now for the 3rd time, Krishna Gopalji comes into his dreams and says, my dear Mahavendra Puri, I'm so grateful for the extreme endeavor you took to retrieve this chandan. But bringing it from there to Vrindavan is too much. You applied this chandan to Gopinath in Ramuna, and I will receive the benefit, the cooling effects here in Vrindavan. We are one and the same. And so Mahavendra Puri understood this is what Gopalji wanted. And so he instructed, and they ground all the chandan, all 82 pounds, and they applied in great quantity to Gopinathji. And finally, after completing the batch of this Chandan, he understood that Gopalji had become cooled, finally, after 2+ years of effort, having retrieved him from this dense jungle. And so Madhavendra Puri then actually went back to Jagannath Puri to observe Chaturmas, and then comes back to Ramuna, and he stayed there. He actually doesn't go back to Vrindavan. He stayed in this area. And so, we see this pastime has many wonderful teachings. And so that's a glimpse of it. There's a lot that it continues. After narrating this pastime, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, makes a presentation to Lord Nityananda, saying, "How great is Madhavendra Puri?" And how great is Madhavendra Puri? And various explanations are done, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recites a beautiful verse that Madhavendra Puri had composed, and everybody went into ecstasy, including Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so he concludes this chapter by glorifying Madhavendra Puri. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami gives us one benediction that I wanted to read before we get into some of the analysis. He says in text 212, "One who hears this narration with faith and devotion attains the treasure, a love of Godhead, at the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna." So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said there is nothing greater one can achieve than Krishna Prema. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, one who hears this pastime with great faith and devotion, both are required, one can achieve Krishna Prema. So this is the great fortune that we have by hearing this pastime. So now let us analyze a little bit of Madhavendra Puri's activities, and we'll draw some parallels to what we see also in Srila Prabhupada and also in His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. So we can imagine what this situation was like if we go to the beginning of this pastime. After Gopalji had been established on the top of Govardhan, this daily giant Anukut festival was taking place, a beautiful temple had been established, thousands and thousands of pilgrims are coming daily to enjoy and take worship of the deity. Madhavendra Puri had so many followers and disciples. It would be very difficult for us to leave that place, no? Right? It's such a festive atmosphere, and to renounce that would be very difficult. But when Madhavendra Puri received the instruction to go to Puri, he immediately left. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada comment in the purports here, Prabhupada specifically comments that this is the sign of devotion, that we must be attached to the service to the Lord for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, not attached to any specific service. Because there we start to develop this fruitive mentality, that I'm doing this service because I want something from it, instead of having pure focus on what will please Krishna. So Madhavendra Puri understood that obtaining this chandan was going to give pleasure to Krishna. And so he immediately renounced all these wonderful facilities and festivities that he had and went to carry on this action. So sometimes in our own performance of devotional service, we get enthusiastic if we're given one service. But if we're given another service, we don't have the same enthusiasm. And maybe we even deny or say, "Oh, I'm too busy." But actually, our focus should be not on what service I'm given, but whatever service I'm given, it is a great opportunity to please the Lord. And we should not become, overly attached that this is my service, and if somebody else, if I'm asked to do something else, I have, create some, tension or struggles. No, our attachment just should be to the pleasure of Krishna. And this is what Madhavendra Puri did. And we see the same in Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was established in Radha Damodar temple, the epicenter of our Gaudiya Vaishnava temple. He had a beautiful room and a kitchen where he could cook for Rupa Goswami and Radha Damodar every day. And he left all of that to come to America. Now, today we think about America as this place of greatness and, we all want to go and it's so difficult. I can assure you it's not. But you can see in Srila Prabhupada's Markina Bhagavata Dharma,
his personal diary. He was actually lamenting, for Krishna, why you brought me to this hellish place. This was not some great place he was eager to go. He was coming from Vrindavan Dham, the place where he was so enchanted and so enthusiastically writing and enjoying Krishna bhajan. But because his spiritual master had given him the order to come to the West, he undertook that great austerity, suffering heart attacks, riding in a cargo ship, and landing in a very, very hellish place, New York City. It is not a place for the pure of heart or for the mode of goodness. It is a very low and dark place. But Srila Prabhupada did it enthusiastically. As Mahavendra Puri left everything from Govardhan to endure a great austerity. And we see the same in His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj. He was centered and established in New York, in the East Coast in the 70s, rendering great service, doing book distribution. But Srila Prabhupada needed him to go to India, where they were struggling to establish some of the important centers. Srila Prabhupada, wanted to make sure that India would become a strong practitioner of ISKCON, and so. But the devotees who had gone, mostly from Western descent, were struggling to navigate the Indian environment, and so Srila Prabhupada asked Guru Maharaj to go and work there, and it was a great austerity. Because Guru Maharaj was going to work there, and many of his godbrothers now write, he did not have the easiest of time. People were not the most cooperative with him, meaning some of the devotees even. It was a difficult time, but Guru Maharaj approached this with great humility, great patience, and tolerance, and persisted to render some of the greatest service to Srila Prabhupada by establishing the temples in Mayapur, in Vrindavan, and in Juhu. And so we see that even Guru Maharaj was detached. Even today we see all the efforts that Guru Maharaj is putting to establish his Kurukshetra temple. Why? Why is he so determined to bring this Kurukshetra temple up as quickly as possible? Because it was a direct desire of Srila Prabhupada. It is not his desire. It was not one of his dreams. But it was a dream and desire and an instruction of Srila Prabhupada. And if you look at Guru Maharaj, every temple he has established, every place that he puts his effort into, it is a direct instruction or desire of Srila Prabhupada. There is no personal motive, no personal desire in anything he does. And so just like Mahavendra Puri would leave any place to go render service. After Guru Maharaj had established his Glory of India project, it was such a beautiful establishment. But the devotees in Delhi will tell you, how often and how much time, at least up until recently, where his health has become a little bit challenged, he spent actually in that temple. Very little time. He fully detached from it once it opened and continued on fulfilling the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. So we see this same mood. The second point I'll make on analyzing Mahavendra Puri. Krishnadasa Kaviraj Goswami talks about, towards the end of this chapter, that Krishna gives difficulty to his devotees to glorify them, to show how far the devotee will go to please Krishna. Because we are very foolish, at least speaking for myself. If I see something great happen very quickly, I will think, oh, that was easy. But instead, Krishna gives difficulty to the devotees so that they will be glorified for their extreme determination in willing to fulfill the orders of the Supreme Lord. And so you can see Mahavendra Puri, how much difficulty he had to endure. First of all, going from Vrindavan to Jagannath Puri, surely there was similar sandalwood available elsewhere, but no, going all the way to Jagannath Puri. And then surely maybe 10 pounds of sandalwood is sufficient. No, 82 pounds was requested. So great difficulty was given to Mahavendra Puri. But why? To glorify how great Mahavendra Puri's devotion was. This difficulty, sometimes we observe, we wonder why Krishna didn't make it easier for him. But actually it is the opportunity for Krishna to glorify his great devotee, because they will go through any effort to render service to the Lord. And we see this with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada struggled to establish this movement. We see sometimes the glory years from about 1967 to 1977. But if you read in Lilamrita, from basically 1940 to 1965, 67, it was a great struggle. Losing the League of Devotees, having to stop the production of Back to Godhead because there were no funds, passing out from heat stroke in the ditch all alone in Delhi, riding to trains daily, carrying paper to the printers, and then landing in New York with nowhere to go and being attacked by his roommate. We could go on, the difficulties he faced. But Srila Prabhupada persevered. And because of that, we are all the great beneficiaries of that perseverance. And so Srila Prabhupada himself endured great difficulty to render service. And it only stands to glorify the greatness of Srila Prabhupada. And similarly, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, how much difficulty was there to establish his Glory of India project. Even he suffered a major heart attack. It's very similar to Srila Prabhupada in his journey to the U.S., suffering a heart attack. In Guru Maharaj's journey to establish one of the great dreams of Srila Prabhupada. He wanted a prominent temple. He wanted many prominent temples, but he wanted one great temple in Delhi, being the capital of the country. And Guru Maharaj made it happen, enduring great difficulty, including his own health, a heart attack, so many calls by his godbrothers to slow down. No. And still to this day, we see how much difficulty he endures. He travels extensively, putting his own health at risk, and doesn't want to take even a moment's rest. And when you ask Guru Maharaj, please slow down, please take some rest, what does he say? Please don't take away my opportunity to serve. This is the determination and the enthusiasm, irrespective of whatever difficulties are there. And so just like Mahavendra Puri was willing to endure anything for the pleasure of Krishna, we see that Guru Maharaj is willing to endure any level of discomfort for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada, Gauranga Mahaprabhu, and Lord Krishna. And so we see that very similar thing. I'm just looking at the time. Maybe I'll cover one more piece of analysis, if that's okay, and then we'll open it up.
Okay. Sure.
Okay. So, one of the other very beautiful things that I really struck me when I heard this pastime was Mahavendra Puri's humility. So when Mahavendra Puri received the pot of shear from the pujari, he honored that shear, and then I said he immediately left. He actually did not go back to the Gopinath temple to take darshan for Mangalarti. And we might think, why? Isn't that the right etiquette? He should have taken the blessings of Gopinath to continue on to Puri. He knew that because Gopinath had stolen this pot of shear from Mahavendra Puri, that people would glorify him to no end. And to avoid this glorification and adoration, he immediately left Ramuna without telling anybody to avoid that fame. Sometimes if we are honest with ourselves, we will try to walk into those situations. But Mahavendra Puri was so detached that he immediately left Ramuna. And like I mentioned, when he entered Jagannath Puri, he was receiving so much worship and so much fame. There were people following him in the streets that he was ready to leave. But then he remembered, I have a service to perform. And so though he didn't want the fame, though he actually went out of his way to avoid it, when it came, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, fame comes to the pure devotee by the arrangement of providence, by Krishna. When it came to him, when it came to that or his service, he stuck to his service. And so he tolerated that fame and that adoration to execute the service. Because he could have ran away from Puri as well. So he understood, what was the highest principle. And we see this same mood in Guru Maharaj. I have observed some very, beautiful things of what he says. Once we are driving in a car, we are leaving Vrindavan, and along the road, literally there were devotees on both sides of the road for what seemed like a kilometer, greeting Guru Maharaj as he was leaving. And Guru Maharaj was, and he said to himself, I was just sitting behind him, so he was not meaning it for anybody to hear, but he said to himself, this is embarrassing. He was truly embarrassed by the love and the gratitude that the devotees were showering to him. And he didn't say that in a mood to give an instruction. There was nobody meant to hear it, but that was in the inner chamber of his heart, how he felt. He's detached. Once we pulled up in Pune, and the devotees had come out, and they're performing an ecstatic kirtan on the street to receive him. And he made a similar comment, and he saw Radheshyam Prabhu was there, and he said, "Oh no, even Prabhuji's here. They should go back inside." He was embarrassed. He wasn't, embracing this, and you see this mood of Guru Maharaj, regardless of where he goes, he's fully detached. But of course, he receives this fame and this fortune wherever he is because of all the service that he has rendered to Srila Prabhupada. And so when it comes between that and rendering service, he will carry on with the service, even if it comes with some of this adoration. But in the core of his heart, he holds a great wanting to be removed and distant from that. And you see that even in his dealings with his godbrothers, dealings with different situations. He always takes a secondary role. He takes a second step back, never puts himself in the forefront. And so I found this to be very similar, as we see how Mahavendra Puri established himself, how Guru Maharaj continues to carry himself forward. I don't know, I have a few other analysis, but maybe...
Please go on, Puri.
Are you sure?
Please.
I want to be respectful
sure,
to everybody's
sure.
time. Okay. Krishnas Kaviraj Goswami comments also in this pastime that, a great devotee has one characteristic, that he brings Krishna to many people, right? And so Mahavendra Puri came with literally nothing, was not even begging alms. And by, his pure devotion, was able to establish this temple on top of Govardhan. And thousands and thousands and thousands of people were coming. This is what a great devotee can do. With literally, from a material standpoint, nothing in their pockets, but full of bhakti in their hearts. They're able to bring thousands and thousands of people to Krishna. And we see the same thing with Srila Prabhupada, right? He crossed the ocean with 40 rupees in his pocket, and some copies of his books. But he was able to establish 108 temples on 6 continents and bring millions of people to Krishna consciousness. And we see the same with Guru Maharaj. The temple. Now there are 15 temples in Delhi. Thousands, and all of them are full. They're overflowing. I was there on the installation of Lord Nrsingadev and Nrsinga Chaturdasi, which is not such a celebrated festival in the north. The temple was full, not of just devotees and congregations, but the public. For hours there were long queues just to take darshan. And I thought, how proud Srila Prabhupada must be of Guru Maharaj for being able to establish this temple and 14 other temples and still more coming. And bringing thousands of people, and not only in Delhi, establishing temples in Bombay and in Kanpur and of course in Africa and all over the world. Guru Maharaj has established these temples and bringing so many people to Krishna consciousness. Even preaching in Pakistan and in Russia, this mood, you can see the same ability of Guru Maharaj to bring so many people to Krishna consciousness, following in the footsteps of our Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur, and of course Mahavendra Puri. So one other kind of nice parallel, maybe I'll end and I'd like to have some question, comments, discussion. This Gopinath Didi. This Gopinath Didi is so beautiful. I don't know if any of you have taken I had an opportunity to visit Ramuna. We reached on an overnight train from Puri. I was with the Vaishnava Maharaj, and there was a small group of us, and we attended Mangal Arti. And coincidentally, there were 12 of us, and each of us got one pot of this sheer. And it is the most exquisite thing I have ever I can still taste it. It is so sweet, so fragrant, so amazing. But anyway, it is beautiful darshan and beautiful sangha. And I came to know a few other details of this Gopinath Didi that I'll share with you. So this Gopinath Didi actually manifested in Treta Yuga. When Lord Ramchandra was in Chitrakoot, in his exile, he had come to one ashram to take refuge, and there were some cows, and he was hearing the mooing of the cows, and he began to smile. And Mother Sita began to inquire, "My dear Lord, why are you smiling?" And he said, "Oh, I'm hearing the cows, and I'm remembering my pastimes to come when I come as a cowherd boy." And Mother Sita thought, "Cowherd boy? No, you are a king. You are a king. You cannot come as a cowherd boy wearing simple turban and dhoti and this." And Mother Sita had a little bit of lamentation. And so Lord Ram said, No, let me show you what this pastimes will be like and how beautiful the form will be, and you'll surely want to come with me. And so he took out one arrow from his quiver, and he began to carve in a rock this beautiful form of Gopinath, along with the astasakis and some of the manjaris, and he had this beautiful carving. But he actually quite did not finish it because Mother Sita was so anxious to see it that she begged him, let me see it. And so this deity, she was able to take darshan. She became enchanted by the beauty of Gopinath, and in her heart had this desire that, yes, I will also come with you when you come for your Krishna Lila. And so if you see this deity today, it is actually a carving that's on a frame, and it's carved. And then, so if you look at the darshan, often the carvings are covered by some cloth, and only the deity himself is visible. So this is the deity. It actually stayed in Chitrakoot for some time, and then one king, found this deity. It was not being worshipped so much, and so he decided to move it, and he was going to take it actually to Jagannath Puri. But along the way, they ended up in Ramuna, and there Gopinath came into the dream of this king and said, "Keep me here, this place is very beautiful." And so the deity was established in Ramuna, but coming from Chitrakoot to Ramuna. Now, you might be interested to know, given the topic of today's conversation, that actually the name of the deity Gopinath was given by the wife of the queen, because she saw the astasakis there and said, yes, he is the king of the gopis. But actually, what was his name prior to this? His name was Gopal Krishna. So what coincidence that is, I don't know. But since we're glorifying Mahavendra Puri, Srila Prabhupada, and His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, I thought I would end with that, saying that the original deity name of the Gopinath, Shirchur Gopinath, is Gopal Krishna. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki. Sorry for going long, but maybe we can have some discussion. Any comments, reflections, realizations, questions?